So anyway, I came up with this topic, opposites attract, and I wanted to know why opposites attract. I mean, we all know opposites attract,
Right.
right? Um, but when I looked into it, the research is really muddy. It's yeah,
Yeah, how
it's
do you even
unclear,
start? Yeah.
and it's unclear because there's two things that really have it confused, and we're going to address those today. One is introversion versus extroversion, and the research around that is completely inconclusive. And the
Okay.
other thing is attachment theory, and we're going to get into that. And there's a problem with attachment theory that kind of muddies this up as well. And
Okay.
so I thought today we would talk about the secret science that tells why opposites attract, because it is kind of a secret, but we're going to come at this from a whole bunch of different directions, and it all points to one kind of basic thing that goes on. So, welcome to Mastering Thought, where we talk about the mind, marriage, and mental health. And I'm Dr. Mark Waller, and this is my favorite sidekick, Christina Black.
Howdy.
I've been a marriage family therapist for 25 years, and we're going to talk about opposites today. I've probably seen over 1,000 couples in 25 years. And when I started this whole thing off, I saw a pattern, and I got pretty excited about it. And I thought, I got to figure out what this pattern is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did a lot of research. And so, and what I came up with, I call the dance of the lion and the unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the story of how I discovered how opposites attract and what those opposites actually are.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually became the subject of my doctoral dissertation and later a popular book, which I will shamelessly promote later on.
And it's an excellent book.
You've read it. You
I've
know I
read
get
it. I know.
I get super good feedback because, as a matter of fact, I'll get a call from like England or an email from Dubai, and somebody will say, "I
Mm-hmm.
read your book. Is there any chance
Mm-hmm.
you can answer some questions?"
So
And
neat.
yeah, it's very cool. It's it's
Yeah.
it's not a huge bestseller, but it sells pretty well every single month. So,
It's pretty cool.
all right. So
I didn't realize that was your doctoral dissertation too. If I
it
knew it,
was.
I forgot it. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So you were seeing this pattern pretty early, and it sparked enough interest that you made, yeah, your whole dissertation about it.
Yeah, I could see, it was really weird, and I'll talk about this a little later, but I could see parts of this here and there, and
Hmm.
I knew there was a pattern. I knew there was something going
Hmm.
on,
Yeah.
and I couldn't understand what it was. Well, the problem when you write a dissertation, you've got to review all the research from everywhere. You really don't have a choice. That's part of it. You have to cite every possible study there is.
Wow.
And so, I had to get into this thing neck deep,
Yeah.
and which I did. And
Yeah.
so
And what you're about to talk about is that stuff you got neck deep on, right?
that's right. What
Yeah.
I've discovered was absolutely shocking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was shocked.
Yeah.
So now, what do we mean when we talk about opposites? By opposites, I'm talking about biological based psychological and emotional polarity.
Mm.
So this isn't touchy feely stuff.
Yeah.
You were going to say something.
Well, and this is all done non-consciously, right?
Yes, that's right. It's outside of our awareness.
I just think it's interesting that we can tell all these things so quickly without realizing it. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm going to address that, how that non conscious information gets transmitted.
Yeah, okay. I like that.
So, what we're going to look at are many facets of this, but there are only two dimensions of it. So,
Okay.
there's a piece here, and there's a piece here, and there's a piece here, and there's a piece here. But when you put them all together, they really point to just two things.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a result of that, I wrote this book, The Dance of the Lion and the Unicorn. And for those of you who are interested, you don't have to take notes. You can read the book because all the research is in the book. And there's our friend, Sunny.
This is Sunny.
So if
Sunny
you like our
invites you to like and subscribe to our channel. And for every single subscription that we get from this episode, Sunny gets to have a treat.
I think Sunny's a little hungry from last week, though.
Yeah, we're gonna have to basically like have a video where she gets handed 100 treats, basically.
That's right.
We'll find out how many subscribers satiate Sunny per week.
Yeah, so we're desperate for subscribers so Sunny doesn't starve.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. All right. So one of the first places I started was looking at early childhood development. Because, somehow I knew this came from early childhood development. And one of the most famous,
Doesn't like almost everything, like really when it comes down to it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
So I began to dig, deep. And one of the first places I looked was a gentleman named Erik Erikson, who's very famous for his stages of development.
Okay.
And I think there are 15 stages. I mean, Erik Erikson is kind of on a par with Freud.
Okay.
And he was an early pioneer in human development and psychology. But I want to concentrate on his first two stages because there's a huge clue in here. The first stage is trust versus mistrust. And now in his parlance, stage one is before stage two. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case, but there's something going on here. So those infants who don't make it through the trust versus mistrust stage, in other words, they learn mistrust instead of trust, they become fear-based. So they look at the world through kind of a fear-colored lens.
Sure.
And I boiled this down into a developmental question, which is the world safe?
Yeah.
And I believe for half of us, the answer is no. The world is not safe.
Because we've learned mistrust.
That's right. Excellent.
Okay.
That's exactly right. So somehow in that early developmental stage, and if you're interested, you can go look up Erik Erikson, and this is like from birth to 18 months or something like that. Okay. So the question is the world safe? And for those people, the answer is no. Now, developmental step number 2, which happens, I think, after 18 months, from 18 months to 2 years or something like that, he labels autonomy versus shame and doubt. And the people who don't make it well through the second stage have issues around shame or rejection. So they become kind of shame-based.
Sure.
So the second developmental question is, am I okay? Well, the world's safe. If the world is safe, then am I okay to be in the world? Mm-hmm. And of course, the answer is no. You're not okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I thought that gave me a very interesting look into maybe some underlying emotional things.
Yeah.
That pointed to this opposites. And, what are those two things? Fear versus shame. Okay.
Right.
Questions, comments?
I'm just looking to see where you're going to take it, so I'll just be patient and wait.
Okay. All right. So then, of course, we have fight versus flight.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out people have a biological predisposition for their reaction to a perceived threat.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interesting because this is a response to neurotransmitters, which I won't name right now, and the HPA axis. The HPA axis is the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal system that gives us our stress response.
Okay.
And then it also involves adrenaline. Now, I can't remember where I pegged this in my book, what developmental time period, but this is in gestation. This is before the baby's born. There is a biological, I describe it kind of as a switch that gets thrown, and you kind of go one way or the other. And so from that moment on, you have a tendency towards fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of your brain's biological response to certain neurotransmitters and hormones and adrenaline in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Which I also thought was fascinating. So what does this point to? What this points to is there is a biological difference between people, a big biological difference.
And it's either A or B, right?
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
And we're going to see more of this come up. So, I want to inform everybody who's listening that what we're talking about is kind of, in a sense, the same thing, only we're just looking at it from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back in the 80s, they did a lot of research with babies, infants. And one of the experiments they did, they labeled Approach-Withdrawal. So what they did was they showed, to make it simple, they showed babies scary faces, pictures of scary faces. And what they discovered was that certain infants would become curious and they would approach the picture and analyze it and become involved in trying to understand what it was and so forth. Mm-hmm. An equal number of infants, when they saw the scary face, would withdraw. They would want to get away. They would want to escape. Mm-hmm. And so they labeled this phenomenon approach-withdrawal. Now, here's where it gets kind of contradictory and interesting. They found that infants who were highly reactive to novel stimuli, like scary faces or loud noises, were more likely to grow into shy, introverted, and cautious children. So where does that point?
I mean,
when you think about your own relationship, who's the most cautious?
I don't know. What?
Well, you think about any relationship, who's the most cautious?
Maybe, are you wanting me to say the unicorn? Because
yeah, it's a unicorn.
Okay, well, we just didn't talk about lion, unicorn. Well, no, we did. Never mind. Sorry. I'm just being a goofball.
No, but here's the interesting thing about it is that they grow into shy and we're going to address introversion later, but they grow into so they have
they're
higher,
highly reactive.
Isn't that interesting? So
yeah,
they're highly.
So it means that they get a bigger response from whatever they're seeing,
right?
And so it feels a little less settling.
But what they do is they hold it inside because they're shy and introverted and cautious. So what's really interesting about these people is they have a bigger emotional reaction, but you see less of it on the outside.
Okay.
So it looks like nothing is bothering them.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. They're like
I thought it was wild when I saw that.
They're like disowning their feelings about it, maybe?
Well, yeah, they're suppressing them. And so when I see couples there's usually one that's sitting there very passively and not showing any emotion, and their partner's complaining that they don't have any feelings and they need to express and I know based on this research that they're wildly spinning inside, but they've just learned to not express that.
Huh.
Infants, on the other hand, who were low reactive tended to develop into bold, sociable, and outgoing personalities, which makes no sense, does it? I mean, you would think that they would be highly emotionally stimulated because they've got these bigger personalities.
I'm more thinking like, I think we've talked about Free Solo on here. Have you seen it?
No.
So it's like this guy who's going to climb Half Dome, but with no ropes.
Uh-huh.
And they're doing this documentary about him, and he is like, it takes a lot for him to feel something, and so he has to do very extreme things to feel anything. And I almost just wonder, in a similar way, if both of these people, like the infants who are highly reactive, like it's so reactive, they're not comfortable, so they're trying to like make it nicer for themselves. And the people who are low reactive want more stimulation, and so they're like trying to chase it. I don't know. It's just
I
a
like the
thought.
way I like that analysis. That makes sense. And what's interesting is the way we parent these children.
Mm-hmm.
See, we've got one that's more bold and outgoing. What do we tend to do? How do we tend to parent that bold child?
Probably more boldly or harshly, or
We try to
more
restrict them.
power.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is exactly opposite of their temperament. Whereas the other infant who's more shy and introverted and cautious, what do? We try to push them.
And trying to get them to get out there in the world.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we tend to adopt a parenting style in exactly the opposite way that would be productive for that child's temperament.
Mm-hmm.
Which, makes sense. The world is pretty messed up.
Yeah.
All right, so enough on that. So that's
Wow.
approach-withdrawal. That's
Yeah.
well-documented research. Okay, now we're going to fast forward from the 80s to the late 90s and talk about demand withdrawal. Now, ironically enough, there was never much research done on couples. There was a lot of research done across couples. For instance, there would be research on, are rural couples more happy than urban couples, or whatever. Actually, there's research done that proves that highly suggests that couples have more satisfaction if there's a dominant partner. Lion and the unicorn. Interesting. Okay, so what they finally did after years of neglect is they looked within the relationship.
Mm-hmm. At the
And
system itself.
right. And so when they finally did that in the late 90s, which was not that long ago, they found that one partner they labeled demand, who's perceived as more dissatisfied or emotionally engaged, makes requests or express needs, criticism, or complaints. This partner is actively seeking change, discussion, or resolution regarding an issue in the relationship. I would say this boils down to really one thing. They want an emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the demand. They labeled that partner the demand partner. The withdrawal partner, the other partner, responds by withdrawing, either physically, leaving the room, avoiding eye contact, or emotionally, becoming silent, unresponsive, or disengaged. This partner might feel overwhelmed or simply wish to avoid conflict. Okay, we know who avoids conflict, don't we?
Unicorn.
Exactly. So this actually, I had written the Dance of the Lion and the Unicorn, I don't know, a long time ago, before this was even researched.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to me, there were only maybe a couple people who were well known in psychology who had picked up this pattern. They finally did this research, and this demand withdrawal syndrome just validated all the work I had done on the lion and unicorn.
Yeah. How exciting.
Yeah, it was. It was very interesting.
Yeah, to get like a new study. That's so fun.
So think about it. In the 80s, we established approach withdrawal in children, and then in the 90s, we established demand withdrawal in married couples. It's basically the same pattern.
Right.
Only one was seen in children, the other one was seen in adults. Okay, now it gets even spookier. At least for me it did.
Okay.
Because they took this approach withdrawal and they thought, I wonder what's happening in the brain.
Oh, right.
And what they found was that there was this asymmetry in the front of the brain of children. So when the central nervous system is stimulated or aroused, the child, some children lit up the left prefrontal area and some children lit up the right prefrontal area. So children with more left frontal activity might be more outgoing or have a lower reactivity to stress. Now, there's something also I picked up in the literature that I thought was very interesting about these children. When you light up the left prefrontal lobe here, it specializes in approach-type activities, and in particular, there's a type of anger that we use to break through barriers. So let's say I'm trying to open a door and the door is stuck. Okay, well, finally I'm going to get angry and I'm going to throw my weight into that door. That happens in the left prefrontal area.
Okay. It's like the same thing when people used to hit their TV to make the picture work.
Yes.
Right? It is, right? Like, ah.
So the higher right frontal activity is often associated with increased negative emotionality, such as fear, sadness, or anxiety. These children might exhibit a tendency toward withdrawal behaviors when faced with stressors. So the right front of the brain specializes in getting away.
Defense.
And so not only do we have approachers and withdrawers, but we find out they have different brains.
Yeah.
So the approachers, when they're stimulated, they light up the left prefrontal area, and the withdrawers, when they're stimulated, light up the right prefrontal area.
So cool.
And the interesting thing about that is the whole right hemisphere is actually nonverbal. So they can't talk about it very well.
Oh.
So it's really hard.
Interesting.
It's hard to get into the emotional understanding of what's going on with these people because all of this stimulation is happening in the right prefrontal area, which is nonverbal. It's a little easier to access the information in the left prefrontal area.
Oh, is that why like art therapy unlocks things because it's nonverbal?
Yeah, and a lot of that's happening in the right side.
Right, because it's the creative side anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So another way of looking at this is predators versus prey. So those that light up the left prefrontal area are specialized in pursuit, activities we would associate with predators.
Right.
Those that light up the right prefrontal area specialize in prey tactics like hiding and escaping. And of course, if you're married to one of these people, you're very familiar with how they hide and escape. Unfortunately, they don't know they're hiding and escaping, and you have to kind of point it out to them, and that can get awkward. So what we have so far is we've got this EEG asymmetry. So they have different brains, and the activity is completely different, and the strategies that they stimulate are radically different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how are we doing so far? Is this making sense?
I think so. You're doing good.
You can see where this is leading, can't you?
Yes. It took me a second to jump on your bandwagon or whatever, to see where you're going, but I'm there. I'm with you.
So, just so people know, this is the emotional, psychological, and biological underpinning of virtually every couple I've ever seen for 25 years.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. Now it goes even further. So it turns out that these two people, one has a preference for the sympathetic nervous system and the other one has a preference for the parasympathetic nervous system. So what does that mean? Well, the sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for action in response to perceived threats or stressors. So this is kind of the explosive, external, moving forward.
Yeah.
And you're kind of an expert on the whole autonomic nervous system. And I'm sure you can relate to this.
I mean, yeah. I definitely I had to remember it as though your body is being sympathetic to what your senses are perceiving. Like it throws itself into what you're picking up. But then I would remember that parasympathetic was P for peace.
I like that. Yes, that's exactly right.
S for stress, P for peace.
Oh, I like that. I never
Thank
thought of
you.
it that way. That's cool.
It helped me. I'm all
So
about mnemonics.
parasympathetic works to conserve energy and restore the body to a state of calm and balance after the sympathetic response. And so the way I like to think about parasympathetic, it's the shutting down, withdrawing, digestive kind of. Now, the way I've described it here, it kind of sounds like a positive thing, but the key phrase here is after the sympathetic response. So what's happening with this type of person is when they're stimulated, when there's a stressor, they just shut down.
Right. Yeah. That's when you get into like tunnel vision and your body stops working on making saliva or digesting food. It's like all your energy is going toward your physical actions that you need to do in that moment.
In other words, these people are desperate to stay calm.
Yeah. And it's very easy to set them off.
Right.
They're looking for the shoe to drop.
Absolutely. And you will hear them in therapy, at least. I hear them use this phrase all the time. I need to walk on eggshells. So, we think of the parasympathetic people are angry. They're going to put their fists through the wall. Yeah, that's a problem. But this parasympathetic person is sitting there. Their wheels are wildly spinning in their heads, and they're completely overwhelmed. And yet, on the outside, you can't see an emotion to save your life. It's very interesting. So you've got this one person there who wants to make this emotional connection, and this other person over here who's completely shut down and incapable of making an emotional connection because they have a preference for the parasympathetic.
Right. It makes sense.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about attachment theory, because my research led me to this, and I realized this was right on target. And so back in the 80s, there were two people. John Bowlby, who's a researcher, came up with attachment theory, And then Mary Ainsworth, who was another researcher, completely independent, kind of expanded on it. And what they would do is they would take these children and put them in what they called a strange situation. And so the mothers would take the child into a room filled with other children, and eventually they would remove the mother from the room and observe the infant's reaction. But what was very important was when they reintroduced the mother to the child, how did that child react?
Right.
And if you read the literature, it's a little convoluted because they came up with like 4 different types of attachment. But ultimately, if you read the literature on adult attachment, it really boils down to 2.
Right.
And I've kind of shortened it here. 1 is avoidant. And they maintain emotional distance from others, often appearing detached or uninterested in closeness. There's often discomfort with intimacy. And so when to look at it from the research standpoint, when they reintroduce the mother into the strange situation, the child would avoid eye contact, they would avoid the mother, and they were not necessarily happy to see the mother. Or sometimes they were ambivalent, and they wanted, they were grateful the mother was back, but then they would angrily push her away. And the preoccupied, it's actually called anxious preoccupied, seek high levels of intimacy and need reassurance. And so the preoccupied word means they're constantly thinking about the relationship. The avoidance trying to get away from the relationship because it feels threatening. The anxious preoccupied person is, thinking about how to get closer. Now, here's where this gets really weird. If you go in and ask the question, do opposites attract? Well, avoidance and preoccupied absolutely attract to one another. But if you look at the literature, you will find out, I think that avoidance and preoccupied only amount to about 50% of the population.
Whoa.
So I think avoidance are like 25% and preoccupied's like 24% or something like that. But they do pair up. There is evidence they find one another.
Yeah. So then how many people are ambivalent?
Well, the ambivalence is folded, ultimately in adult attachment, the ambivalent quality is folded in, I believe, into the I don't know, but
okay.
It's
in one or the other.
It's folded into one of these other categories. When you look at adult attachment, it kind of resolves itself into 3. Secure attachment, avoidant, or anxious preoccupied. And there are other phrases that they use for this. The way I'm describing it's not the only way to describe it.
Right.
But it turns out, okay, well, wait a minute, we're missing 50% of the population. How do opposites attract there? Well, here's where I have a beef with attachment theory. Because, see, I don't think secure is an attachment style. I think it's an attachment quality. And so I think everybody, and we did a video on this. It seems like a long time ago.
Like a year and a half ago.
And I will attach it to this episode. But my theory is that everybody is avoidant or preoccupied. Yeah. Some are insecure and some are secure.
Well, and that makes so much more sense with the EEG asymmetry too. Right. That like if anyone can become a healthier version of preoccupied or avoidant, then they can become secure, eventually.
That they're secure, but they still are somewhere on the continuum of being avoidant or preoccupied.
Yeah, they're still gonna fire off from whichever side of their prefrontal cortex.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's just because they're secure doesn't mean those differences go away.
Right.
Exactly. All right. Moving right along. So attachment theory is definitely a part of this, and it's very popular these days.
Yeah.
But I wish people would look at our video about this, because I really think secure attachment is not an attachment style. It's a quality of attachment. All right. Now let's look at introversion and extroversion. And this is where my little train kind of went off the rail, because I was sure that this would track all these opposites I was finding. And it turned out I was wrong. So introverts, the best way to discover if you're an introvert is introverts expend energy socially and need time alone to recharge. Extroverts, on the other hand, expend energy when they're alone and they recharge through interaction. And so when I ask people this question, they immediately know whether they're introverted or extroversion. So if you go to a party and you come home and you need to spend the next day alone to recharge, you're an introvert. But if you're kind of feeling low on energy and you go to a party and your energy level raises, you're probably an extrovert.
Yeah. So it doesn't really have to do with being shy or like whatever social per se. Like,
Right.
you can be a very social, bubbly person, but then need time to recharge after you leave being with people.
Well, the point is, you would think that this would align itself with EEG asymmetry and all the
Totally.
other
Yeah, I
things,
can see your point. Yeah.
but it doesn't. That's the
Yeah.
problem. It probably
All
only
introverts aren't unicorns.
that's correct. That's absolutely what I discovered. All introverts
Yeah.
are not unicorns. And now this is where it gets really weird. And this is hard. Makes my job difficult when I see a new couple, because sometimes they'll come in and who I think is the unicorn is actually just an introverted lion. But in every single case, they're married to an extroverted unicorn, which is really weird to look at.
Yeah, they're still finding opposites.
They're absolutely finding opposites, but the introversion or the extroversion doesn't point to this basic opposite characteristic that we're looking at today. It can, but it doesn't always do it. So it's not highly correlated enough to be part of the dimensions that we're exploring. Which was really weird. As a matter of fact, a lot of my research came from Dave Kiersey. I believe it was David Kiersey, who wrote a book called Please Understand Me. And it's about the 16 personality types found in Jung. It's, and one of them's introversion versus extroversion. And I actually tried to get a hold of Kiersey because I wanted to talk to him about this, but they wouldn't let me talk to him, which was maybe smart. I'm not sure. But I just wanted to ask him a question. I'm looking at this, these characteristics over here, and I'm not seeing a correlation with your work, and I'm wondering if there's something I'm missing, and I wasn't able to have that conversation. So,
Bummer.
Oh, well. Yeah, I think he got a lot of requests, and his son was kind of keeping people away from him.
Yeah.
Because he wrote, please Understand Me and Please Understand Me Too. And they were both great books, fantastic books. So introversion and extroversion is really kind of a red herring. It's not really part of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But what I do want to talk about is, if you like this stuff and you want to really get into it with a group of people that are learning and growing, Christina and I have developed an online community called Thought Masters. that we're in the process of launching right now. And if you scan this QR code, it takes you to a form. And one of the check boxes is I'm interested in becoming a founding member of this community. And so scan that and let us know you're interested. This is going to happen right away, by the way. So, and we're only going to have a limited number of founders. We're going to ask them to help give us some feedback and some social proof that this is a good thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it, Christina?
I am looking forward to seeing the different members interact with each other. I'm interested in being part of conversations, but I'm also interested to like read what conversations have developed that didn't include me that I can learn from. And yeah, I just look forward to also, I'm a very social person, so I really like getting to talk to people about things, and this is one of my favorite topics. So
Well,
I
I
mean, and
think
I guess those are selfish. Those are selfish. What am I looking forward to? But that's what they are.
well, what you and I have both found, I think, is that people who watch our channel are really fascinated with this work, both the thought watching thing we teach that leads to a spiritual awakening and
Right.
how that applies to relationships and how this information all fits together.
Mm-hmm.
And this, watching a YouTube video is just an enticement. And this gives people a way to go further and deeper.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I mean, I don't know if it's the same for everybody else, but I find that though I can share about this stuff, you really have to wait for someone to be ready to go through the thought watching exercise on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating for me because I don't have that many people in my direct life to talk to about this stuff.
Right.
And I am really looking forward to being able to be in a room, so to speak, with people who are all pursuing it or have already achieved it or something like that.
We're going to have, in that respect, we're going to have three kind of people. We're going to have people who are just learning it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have people who've had the breakthrough.
Right.
And we're going to have people who've really mastered this and want to help other people.
Right.
And so that's going to be very cool. But I think the relationship side of this is going to be really compelling for people because they'll be able to share this whole lion and unicorn philosophy and what they've discovered in their relationships.
Yeah. It's kind of like a group of informed people answering you on Reddit. Only
it's kind of like that.
Only it's our own channel or our own website.
Yeah, and it's designed to be a lot more easy and to facilitate community.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to opposites attract. So what have we discussed here? So basically, let me summarize. We have found these two types. I call them lions and unicorns. Mm-hmm. So the lion is anxious, preoccupied. The unicorn is avoidant. The unicorn prefers flight. The lion prefers fight. They're more predators, where the unicorns are prey. The unicorns are fear or anxiety based. The lions are shame or rejection based. The lions approach. The unicorns withdraw. And when it comes to relationships, the unicorns continue to withdraw, and the lions are seen as the more emotionally demanding of the two. Emotionally demanding. Mm-hmm. They light up the left frontal area. The unicorns light up the right frontal area when they're stimulated. And they have a preference for the parasympathetic as opposed to the lions that have a preference for the sympathetic. So what we've done is we've looked at it through all these different lenses, and it just brings us back to the same conclusion. And the model that I've created from this is called the dance of the lion and the unicorn, where when the lion gets angry, the unicorn says, oh no, here we go again. I need to avoid the conflict. That avoidance looks like rejection and shames the lion to feel like nobody cares or they're not good enough, and they get more angry, and it just goes around and around like that.
Yep. Unfortunately.
But it's all based on all this research that leads us to the inescapable conclusion that these opposite types, now not every single relationship, but I'd say 80 to 90% of all the relationships I've ever seen fall into this matching category.
So amazing.
And
Yeah.
one more time, I'll just promote my book, The Dance of the Lion and Unicorn, which you can find on Amazon, and there is an Audible version of it. So if you're like me and staring at words on a page are a little more difficult, the Audible book is very good. Oh, and I want to make one more point, and this is really weird.
Tell me.
Well, over the course of years, I've worked with gay couples, lesbian couples, and not that this is related, but couples from India who are in arranged marriages. And guess what?
They all do the same thing.
They all do the same thing. And even in arranged marriages, somehow parents have some innate ability to pick out these opposite types and match them with their child that they're trying to get married.
I almost wonder too if we I don't know, bring out things in each other that sort of exaggerate our ability to, I don't know, have some dynamic or change.
Well, I think you're helping me get to my next slide here, which is how do we find one another? Because I sense that's the underlying question. So,
right.
How do lions find unicorns? And how do unicorns find lion? Well, what's interesting about this is the first developmental task of an infant is to read the mother's emotional state by looking at her gaze. And this is attachment. This is the attachment phase, happens in the first 3 years of life. And so and you can see, if you go online and look, you will see videos of babies and mothers interacting. And there is a dance, there is a symmetry between the two of them. And what the baby does is the baby looks at the mother's gaze, and the baby learns to read the emotional state of the mother, because if that is copacetic, then they know they're safe.
Right. That's what I was thinking was the first two developmental questions. Is the world safe, and am I okay?
Right. Yeah. And so this learning is done in the right orbital frontal cortex. And so the first developmental thing we do as human beings is learn how to read a face. Now, this is not recognizing a face. This is how to read a person's emotional state.
Wow.
But since the right orbital frontal cortex is nonverbal, the whole right hemisphere is nonverbal, when we read somebody's state, we can't talk about it because we can't put it into words. So we just say, oh, we both like skiing, so we should get married. Okay, great.
It's funny.
So the bottom line... Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
So the bottom line is, how do and why do opposites attract? Well, the inescapable conclusion is that these two types have complementary survival skills. So
that's so interesting.
So they have a diverse skill set. The prey strategy individual might excel in stealth evasion or resource hiding, while the predatory one might be good at direct confrontation or resource acquisition. This diversity allows them to cover more survival bases. For instance, one could hide from threats while the other could deal with them head on.
Sure.
adaptability to different threats, versatility in response. Different scenarios require different approaches. If they encounter a threat, the prey-oriented partner might find ways to escape or hide, while the predator-oriented partner might confront or intimidate the threat. This versatility could be crucial in unpredictable environments. So the point is, since we're really pointing to a biological difference between partners, this has to be rooted in survival because it's rooted in our biology. So opposites don't attract because of some social engineering or some emotional learning. Opposites attract because it's a biological imperative.
So cool.
So we just innately find a partner who is the opposite. We're attracted to that.
The mystery of it all.
But what I'm saying is if you tie all this research together, it really points to this two-dimensional aspect of relationships.
Seems like it, yeah. Yeah. Man. It's a lot of different types of research too, Mark.
Well, I just kind of had to go down the rabbit hole. I had this sense that there was this lion unicorn thing going on, but I had to find the facts. I had to
Yeah, you're
substantiate
following
it.
the thread along.
Right.
The thread that connected them all. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Neat.
So if you're interested in the lion unicorn, I've got some other books. Mastering Thought, which is about the voice in your head, and Awakening, which is definitely a sequel to the Dance of the Lion and Unicorn. And if there's anything we can do for you, scan the QR code. There's also going to be an email address, and the URL for the QR code will be in the description below. And we will follow up and make sure you get any help you need, any comments, any questions answered, etc.
Any treats to give a dog? We'll take care of it.
Any treats. And if you have any comments, put them in the comments below. Christina and I will respond.
Yeah.
We get wonderful comments. It's amazing.
Thank you for everyone who writes them. Look forward to the future ones that come too.
All right, so it's time to get busy on the next episode.
Get right to work. Let's go.
Anything in finishing up, Christina?
I just really appreciate understanding just our non-conscious patterns and what goes into them, and love that you tease that out. So thanks for explaining this.
Well, this matrix that we live in is not a random thing.
Right.
There's something going on.
There are some patterns around.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you have any last thoughts, Mark?
No, I don't. I think we'll wrap it up, and I'll get to work bouncing some ideas off you for next time.
Perfect. I love that part.
Okay.
Have a good week, everybody.
All righty. Bye-bye now.